Welcome to another episode of the Talent Transformation Podcast. Today we have Neha Sharma, the Senior Vice President of HR at Unifi. Unifi is North America's largest aviation services company. Neha, pleasure to have you here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's interesting because Unifi is not a company where the brand name sort of rolls off your tongue. When I think of the aviation industry, like everyone, I think we just think of airlines. And we assume that they just do everything that needs to be done. I know that's not true. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background on Unifi?
Sure. No, I think that's important as well because as you rightly said, ground handling as an industry, right? It's not truly known, right? And, it's a common belief is airlines. It's all aviation is airlines. But if you look at around the world, right, even in Europe, you have enough players that are actually operating in ground handling and not, they are in aviation services, but they're not the airlines.
Right.
And the whole lot of work that gets done behind the scenes to make sure that the planes, passengers, and cargo, right, is moving efficiently and safely is actually managed by ground handling companies like Unifi. So we are in around 220 stations. When I say stations, airports. So pretty much in all large, airports, as well as many, many field locations or small locations, Unifi is there.
Yeah.
So Unifi has undergone a journey. So Unifi was earlier, Delta's wholly owned subsidiary. It was Delta Global Services.
Okay.
So it has also been, for us, a branding, I would say, kind of transformation as well. Then, when it became Unifi, it's only in last 2 years that our employees are wearing our uniforms now, and therefore they are more visible at the airport. In the past, maybe they were not even visible because they were either wearing on, airlines, uniforms, or it was, let's say, DGS, right? Or the Delta again.
Yeah. Well, as you were talking, I was thinking, well, you do those things, but I have a customer, Delta, that does it all themselves. And now I realize that you are them. So
we have a huge responsibility, right? Huge responsibility in making sure that we match the level of service based on the airlines. And I think that even, that's where I think I was, explaining earlier that it is the challenge for a ground handling company like us is very different because you are talking about a whole range of airlines, right?
Yeah.
From premium to even low cost. And just, the way you manage your client to how do you manage their bag to wheelchair assistance could look different.
So is it when you talk about recruiting in this particular industry, when you go out to hire new people, do you find people that have been in this industry for a long time? I mean, in the banking industry, they mostly hire people, they have entry-level people, and the rest of the people they're hiring have been in the banking industry for, 5 years or 10 years. Is this similar in your industry?
It is, in the sense that there is a preference that you would see from, some candidates who've been in aviation in one way or the other, and they want to be in aviation and specifically at the airport.
Right.
So when you search for, jobs, you actually search for airport jobs. So there are a whole lot of candidates out there that are looking for airport jobs.
I get that because, airports have a certain energy.
Energy, yes.
Right. I mean.
But it's all in the, I would say, maybe a 60-mile radius, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So because the commute can truly, because when you're talking about frontline employees, every hour matters, right?
Yeah.
If you're traveling, not earning, that's a dent in your, daily wages, right?
Right.
So again, they would want to be productive for most of the hours that they really truly want to work, and therefore, accessibility, right, matters. So it's hyper local. You're going hyper local in terms of recruiting.
Yeah. So is your mobility and is your internal mobility mostly then moving people through different jobs at the airport as opposed to moving people to different airports?
One of the things that I would say that Unifi is actively trying to solve for is actually coming up with, what we call career paths, right?
Right.
To say that you're starting here, which seems to be the logical place to start, and it doesn't require too much from you to get started apart from the training that people provide you.
Right.
But once you're here, can you move up, right, in terms of the wage level from, say, $15 to whatever, $30, and what would it take for you to get there? So today, yes, we do move a lot of people internally. We also have employees who are moving actually across stations, which is, I want to move from Detroit to Atlanta.
Sure. Right.
So that also we are solving for, today to organize it within the company.
Yeah. But the training burden when moving somebody from something very customer facing, or well, let's go the other way, from warehouse logistics into a highly customer facing type job can be pretty substantial.
Yes.
And not everybody who even does it necessarily makes it over to that area.
And that's where our selection process come into picture, right? For customer service role, we are, again, very particular as to who we hire, right? But it's just that we don't necessarily close it for our internal employees.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think no matter whether you come internally or externally, you have to go through that selection process to make it.
And do you back that up with performance management that then says, well, we took a chance, you're in this contained idea of an airport, right? So you've got this contained community and you're moving them to these different jobs. And some of them are taking the training, doing the different job and succeeding at it. And, others are not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you doing sort of a performance assessment after mobility that says, okay, they tried, but they didn't make it?
Yeah. So I think in performance in our context looks very different as well, right? It is unconventional in the sense that typically when, if I look at it from my previous experience, which was not in aviation and, working with, say, frontline, workforce, it looked, a lot more organized in the sense of, there are goals that you have, you're being tracked and you're being, reviewed, you're getting continuous feedback, you're moving upwards or right. It's very different from frontline because if you really see performance indicators are, what you would otherwise typically think are maybe hygiene factors. Like one of the most important things, did you show up?
Yeah.
Are you able to show up every single day, on time, again and again, right? So that is one of the key performance indicators.
Yes.
If you're somebody who can do that reliably, you're wonderful. Then safety is huge. Like safety for us is a value. It's not a priority, right?
Right.
You have to live it.
Yes.
Right? You have to keep yourself safe. You have to keep passengers safe. You have to make sure because, that's very critical for us.
Well, let's take another example of that. I mean, obviously, safety is important because you're walking around jet planes and propeller planes and things like that, but also security. So you're working in environments that are, relatively secure environments. How does that affect the recruiting process and how does that affect the operating model that you have?
Sure. So there are very clear requirements in terms of who can work in, what we call, we call it SIDA and non-SIDA. So SIDA is the security, kind of where you've gone through the entire airport badging and fingerprinting and badging process. So all of our employees have to clear that, which is over and above the background checks that we run. It is the, airport running the background check on you.
Yeah.
So that comes with, and then there are some other requirements if you're on the international side of the, airport versus on the domestic. It comes with additional, certification or licenses. So you have to cross that as well. It's a cost for the company. It's definitely some work or time investment from employee as well.
Right.
But it helps if you have that because then that opens up opportunities for you, right?
How much are you using technology in your HR organization?
In a big way. So I think the fact that even today, I would say not all organizations have something called HR technology as a function, right?
Right.
It's there. It's growing, which is wonderful to see.
Yeah.
But then if you look at maybe, 7 years ago, it was hard to find people who would say, I'm part of HR technology team at an organization.
Right.
It was all
in the IT organization and they had a client that was in HR.
HR, yes.
Maybe it was their favorite client. Maybe it wasn't their favorite client. Okay.
You will hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, a lot of companies now, understand that HR tech is evolving so much that you have to have people that are really, focused on it.
Yeah, so the way it looks at it is, I call my team as the product team, right?
Right.
So we do have our IT team, that's engineering team. They do most of the work when it comes to development, right? But when it comes to what needs to be developed and what problem it needs to solve, it's something that my team, would do, right? Because then that comes from a fact that, we are a, business which is highly people oriented, right? I mean, we are here because of the people, right? So it is highly dependent on and being able to truly understand, what they need and what is the best way to solve for it is critical.
Well, I think the IT organizations in the past were struggling with the complexity of HR. The finance system seemed so reasonable. Everybody, the data got into the box and it got added up and the CFO was happy. And then you went over to the HR organization and, people's behavior doesn't fit in a box and, people's history doesn't fit into a few.
And there are so many
text
nuances. The
values.
fact that you're talking
Yeah.
about people,
You're
it
talking
will
about
be like hundreds of nuances that you have to bake in.
Right, right. And I think that we've definitely pushed the idea that whether you are an HR professional or you're an IT professional, and no matter how your organization is structured, somebody has to be designing the product.
Exactly.
And we feel that the product, the systems, if the systems don't add up to be a product, then there's probably a problem.
It's definitely a problem.
Right. Because people start feeling like they are in these various systems, and that's the beginning of the death of a user experience. Like, I know that I'm in a system. Products don't make you feel that way. They just feel like you're getting everything you want, and products are hard to design.
Very, very hard. And see, that's where for us, if you look at it now from a frontline employee, and I feel really, sorry at times, when I see that how much burden we are putting right on them.
Yeah.
They are coming here, for a job that is straining at multiple levels, right?
It's actually a tough job.
Yeah, it's a very, very tough job,
Right.
like emotionally, physically, like you're working in all elements. But it's not easy. Anyway, so I think on top of it, I feel it's important as an organization, especially if you're in people function, no matter, where you sit, right? Even if you're an operational leader who is nothing but managing people, it's important for you to be mindful of the burden that you're putting on them on top of everything else that they have to do in order to earn that, hourly rate that they are here for.
Right.
And if it is putting too much of a cognitive load, just because you have to remember, I have to go to do this here, go there to do something else.
Yeah.
That's just not fair. Right. And the same thing goes even for, as we are looking at for our station leaders, do you truly need them to be making a decision of which background check package I run for this candidate?
Yeah.
Like, that's just a
That's
waste of
something
time, right? Like, why do they have to worry about that? It's something somebody else should be doing or system should be doing, right? So I think we take a very thoughtful approach in terms of when we're looking at designing a solution that from an employee perspective, it has to be simple and very easy to use.
Right.
And we are solving for the things that they are looking for.
Right.
So it is, we've also, for some of the designing of our solutions, we've actually gotten our frontline employees to help design it.
Oh,
say, how do you
that's
interact?
interesting.
How do you interact with it, right? Because it's different for me, right?
Yeah.
The way I interact with on the apps on my phone is different from how they interact with.
Right.
And having that perspective is super critical. So for some of our applications which are truly meant for our frontline employees, they are the ones who are designing it.
Right. How would you describe your workforce? Is it very diverse? Is it very different in different regions? Obviously, because you're very city specific. You're even neighborhood specific, I would almost say.
In some cases, yes. So we are highly diverse in the sense that, and we tap into local communities, right, a lot.
Okay.
So, yes. So, and we see that flavor coming into our, workforce as well then, right?
Right.
So it could be very different ethnic, ethnicities in different, makeup in different locations versus in Minneapolis, right? To Seattle.
Yes.
So yes, we have a whole, vast variety of, I would say, diversity that lives within the Unify ecosystem.
Right.
And they all are co-located. I think that's the one, piece. And then I think that's one of the things that we try to solve for as well.
Right.
It means you're dealing with, employees who have different language, right?
Right.
Clearly, their understanding of English may be limited. And then not all jobs truly require them to even have a certain level of proficiency in English as well, right? Like if you're in commissary, it doesn't really require, but you do need to be able to read and write, sufficiently to be able to follow these safety instructions, right?
Right.
Which is a very different requirement from being able to, have a conversation, right? Fluently.
Yeah.
So that does, makes us, right, remain on our toes and see how do we truly solve for culture, right, and getting everybody together and create that sense of belonging when you have so, different people in the company. And every station, right, or every airport, we call them stations, but anyways, every station is kind of an entity in itself.
It's a microculture.
It is.
That has to work within this bigger framework.
True.
But I could see how you could easily have a group in a particular airport who's been there for 10 years saying, well, this is how we do it over here because we've all agreed on this.
Yes.
And then you go across the country and you have another group that says, well, we do it differently over here.
So I think we've been very careful as an organization to say, there's a way for you to put it in context, right? There are things that you should continue to do things differently, right? And that's the nature of, people that you're managing. And even some of the local nuances that comes because of the work that you're doing for the client or for the airlines,
right?
Which is fair. But then there are certain things when it comes to, it is important for an employee, somewhere in Tampa know that they're part of a very large organization.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that will help them in one way or the other, right, in their careers as well.
Right.
And I just feel it's, and we feel that it's fair that everybody gets that taste of Unify Way, right?
Right.
As to, who we are, why we do what we do and how we do things. So I think we've taken a very intentional approach in terms of, where we would do standardization.
Right.
Versus where we allow for that, flexibility and customization, or even for that matter, even that, culture, which is slightly maybe different, and that's purely based on the group of people that are together there. And it is, heavily dependent on the station leader. So they can truly make and break, right, for us. So we invest heavily in our station leaders.
What's your background? Did you come out of the tech side or did you come from the HR side?
It's all over the place. But yeah, I think in terms of my education, I did my undergrad in science, with physics.
Oh, so did I.
So, okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
So maybe I should ask you, how did you land? I really feel...
It's all over the place for me, actually. So
No, but I think I thought HR was interesting. So in my first job, I had the opportunity to pick up. I mean, I was one of the fortunate ones where I was not put in a box to say, this is where you come. I had a few options.
Good.
So I went straight from my, without any experience, into a very large company in India, which was, in the tech and business process management side.
Oh, okay.
And there, I think I spent time with a lot of functions initially for the first 2 weeks. And I think HR got my interest. I mean, I really got interested in HR.
Okay.
But in the sense that initially for me, it was like, okay, we can look at these problems differently.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
It could be more scientific approach in some cases.
Yes.
Right? Similar, problems exist in physics at, your atomic level, right? I mean, you see that all the time, those interactions happen.
Yeah.
And I think I was coming from that world. So I was really looking at, okay, like one of the simple things I remember I was asking, you're saying people are leaving, you're focusing too much on people are leaving. You have to ask about what did you two do to make them leave.
Exactly.
Right? As simple as, for there is something, there is inertia, right, that people have. You
to
broke
find
that
a real
inertia.
problem that you need
You
to
broke
solve.
that inertia,
Yes.
right? And what did you do to break that inertia? Because they were continuing with us.
Right.
I'm sure you did something. So I think there are a lot of the way I was, asking questions, I just thought that, I could add value because of, my background, right?
Right.
From science. And the fact that in HR, I feel it's a very powerful role from the standpoint. If you understand it, you can influence a lot of positive change in an organization.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So obviously you are thinking about artificial intelligence.
Yes, and that comes from, I'll tell you where that comes in. I did my undergrad. I never chose to do my master's, without experience because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think 10 years into my career in HR, I could just see how technology is becoming bigger and bigger day by day.
Yeah.
And I was questioning my own role many times, right?
Okay.
I don't have to spend time on this, right? And maybe because of my background, I was even questioning, why do I have to spend on time? Like, there is a better way to do this, right?
Yeah.
So that prompted me to really look at, what should I do next in terms of my, education first, my master's. So I applied at MIT, was fortunate enough to get into. So I did my master's, MBA from MIT through their Sloan Fellows program. Sloan, yes.
Yeah.
And in Sloan, you have an option to do thesis. So I chose the topic of my thesis as, AI, changing the face of HR.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. So
okay.
I was halfway, into it, but that something else happened. And I think I shared it earlier that in MIT has a very strong entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think midway, there was an idea that I had, which had nothing to do with HR, nothing to do with technology, nothing. It was a different problem that I had as a mother.
Okay.
And I chose to do a startup on that.
Oh.
And I graduated from MIT through, MIT's incubator, Delta V, which is they host, startups that are, kind of graduating through MIT. So I was one of the startups that came out of MIT on 2019.
Okay.
So I did that for 2 years. COVID was not too kind. So I decided to come back.
It was a tough time.
It was a tough time, yeah.
Yes.
And I think I was running out of my personal runway, I would say, right?
Right.
As well.
Okay.
So I think I wanted to, I chose to wind that down and come back to doing what I knew the best to do.
Yeah.
So I think as a tech again, I think I have interest in a lot of things. So AI specifically for that reason that, I know it is going to truly change how HR works.
Yeah.
It is bound to happen.
Yes. And it's incredible what's going on in the scientific community.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's an interesting journey.
Yes.
So, the entrepreneurial thing is it's a great experience.
It is. I think I've learned a lot in terms of, and that has taught me to look at problems very differently now.
When I talk to people running, HR operations, I always try to impress upon them the the value of thinking it from an entrepreneurial perspective, to really feel like you are. And I say, you really are an entrepreneur, but it's a more, I've thought about, like, because I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and I say to myself, when I listen to some of the challenges that my customers have, I think to myself, well, if you were an entrepreneur, you wouldn't even have that challenge, So I think it's actually harder.
Right.
It's more lonely.
Yes.
To be doing the entrepreneurial thing. But if you just want to solve problems, it's a lot of times easier in an entrepreneurial space because there's no real constraints on you.
Sure.
Whereas I feel like a lot of my corporate customers are, well, one constraint they have is they're having to prove their ideas before their ideas have the time to generate the results
So true.
that you use to prove the idea.
Wow, that's like spot on.
And this is so difficult for them.
And that's the reason why people don't have the courage to do it as well within the organizations. We kill that entrepreneur nature, right?
Absolutely.
Just because you're putting that condition, tell us what is it going to do.
Yes. Calculate the ROI for me.
Yes.
It's like, well, I can't calculate the ROI for this. I got a feeling.
Yes.
It seems like a good thing to do. And then, yes, they back off of it and they avoid making changes. And I think that when you go to do something like develop a product, which is what you have to do now to be successful in HR and to digitally transform today, you must be designing a product.
Yeah.
And when you're just, a lot of the times you're designing the product without the approval, of the organization. And so you have to reduce you have to have a lot of small goalposts where you validate as you go along. Whereas I felt like as an entrepreneur, people kind of leave you alone. They assume you're going to fail, and they leave you alone and you muck around for a while. And then suddenly, you get it right. And then boom, somebody pays attention to you.
So see, I'll tell you what I have learned, because I think for me, I have gotten that entrepreneurship behaviors, right, or habits into the organization now, right? Because, otherwise I can't survive, right? It's as simple as that. So for me, it's about the way I put it is, it's long-term thinking and short-term, acting.
Action.
Right? Action. That is the only way for you to be successful. That's at least for me, that is what has worked. So when I'm talking about a change, I know that change is going to take 2 years, right? Yeah. But then I should be able to clearly articulate to anybody in the organization that needs that for various type of, whether it is, influencing others to adopt that, right? Or even getting approvals, right? Getting the budget, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be able to really, show as to that incremental plan, right? That will get you there. And then what does it truly mean in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year from now?
Yeah.
And then, up to 2 years to fully get to the value that you're hoping to get for.
And so when you look at artificial intelligence, it's a period of hyper change, and it's hard to know exactly how it's going to play out.
Yes.
Right. So your vision is going to have to be a bit fuzzy while things change, and you still have to project a vision with confidence in order for people to accept it. But you have to leave enough room in there for the flexibility. And when you make these plans and you want to put these points on the board, you have to understand that a lot of things are going to be changing around you at the same time. And I think more so than any time in the last 10 years. How excited is your organization about artificial intelligence, and how rooted is that excitement in the reality of it?
Yes. I think to answer the first one is super excited, right?
Okay.
To an extent that, we've had conversation with all our partners to say, how are we bringing it in like today? And I know many of our partners are not ready, right? But then we are ready as an organization.
Right.
And just because it's a very simple thing, right? We use like Copilot, right? Which is Microsoft Launch, right? Like we use it heavily.
Yes.
They've gotten comfortable. I'm not saying, not our frontline employees, right? And that's where I would draw a distinction.
Right.
These are truly our corporate employees and leaders, right? And stadiums who are using it. It would look very different if you have to take that to our frontline employees, right? And I don't think I found a product as yet that's ready to deliver that value to our frontline employee, right? Yeah. In that sense. But anyways, I'm hoping that we'll get there. Now, to your second point, in terms of looking at the reality. See, quite honestly, I don't think we internally, we haven't really fully discussed it, right,
Mhm.
amongst the leaders.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody has a different understanding.
Yeah.
As well as expectations, right?
Yes.
So I think there's some work needed to be first get to the same level of understanding and then
Yeah.
the expectations
Yeah.
to know what is reality for us, right? So there's some work that is happening today for us on that. But I think I'll share my perspective on how I think, how I see it, right? So you have this top layer of who I call creators of AI, right?
Right.
There are a lot of products already out which are dealing with your day to day, right? So to say. And changing how the end user, people at large, interact on a variety of things using AI, which is generative AI is all over the place, right? If you really see from that perspective, that is fine. Then the second layer is truly building business products, right, using AI.
Right.
I think that's the toughest.
That's going to be tough.
That is going to be the
Yes.
toughest, right?
Yeah.
And then the last one is really you're the consumer of AI.
Yeah.
Right? You really don't care who created it, how it come to your company. You just need to have the basic skills to be able to use it, right, and consume it, right? So the second layer is where I think all of us operate truly. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Google is in that second layer.
As well.
They're creating it.
They have to figure out a way to commercialize,
But
right?
they still haven't figured out how to commercialize, AI.
So I really feel it will take companies. Everybody's in a race, but I think you have to be able to see a function in a very different light,
Yes.
right, as to how it is going to operate 10 to 15 years down the line and do the work today.
Yeah.
Right. So that horizon is now 10 years.
Yeah.
Like what I was talking about 2 years internally in the company for in the AI race, I would say it's 10 years, but you have to start painting the picture of what is going to look like 10 years later.
Well, yeah, when you get, AI is a disruptor. And when you get a disruptor that's of this magnitude, possibly higher magnitude than the internet was a big disruptor.
Yes.
You know that some companies end up on one side of that disruption.
Right.
Other companies end up on the other side.
Yep.
I think that the disruption caused from the internet was a learning experience for a lot of big companies, because they didn't respond quickly enough, or in other cases they responded just in time, barely. And I think for AI, that at least at the executive level, the mandate is we do not want to be behind the curve on this one.
Yeah.
But being in front of the curve is pretty challenging.
It's daunting, yeah.
What I'm saying to people is, first of all, is stay calm. Don't get overly anxious about the fact that you don't know exactly how this should be used. But if you're building product, you're going to find some ways to start shaping your product a little bit with a little bit of AI. But then you're going to have to, start, again, because you're in the big corporation, you're going to have to start projecting, where you're going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. And it's going to be it's going to be a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. And I think for me, the biggest unknown there is at the end of it, your any AI is working on training, right?
Yeah.
There is some training data involved.
Yes.
And although you have some base data, like you were explaining, right, it's already fed, but organizations change, right?
Yes.
There is every day new data is being generated.
Yes.
And that needs to be consumed and then understood, right?
Right.
And then you're hoping that AI is going to, give you the results that you're better than, how you look at it, right?
Exactly.
So I think for me, that is the challenging part truly in terms of commercializing the products, right?
Well, I think that the point to that, and that's a great point, because that's where it gets differentiated.
Yes.
I think.
And that's where the opportunity lies.
The opportunity is in that area of differentiation, because everybody's going to turn on ChatGPT.
Exactly.
And summarize
Not everyone
their
is
work.
going to be able to truly, make difference.
Right. Something that's specific to the company.
Yes.
And is evolving as the company evolves.
Yes.
Is going to require the type of AI that we haven't really seen in practice yet, because what we're looking at is the large language model, and that's great.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, every company has its own lingo.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting. It sounds like you've got the right background for it, which is good. And I learned a lot more about you today. I didn't know all those things. I'd love to talk to you sometime about your entrepreneurial adventure. Okay. I think that's something that I think, like the people I work with in corporations can still pick up a lot of,
I agree. Yes.
tips from those types of experiences, even though they can't have them themselves. And I'd love to just have you on again anyway, just to talk about how things are going.
It was wonderful.
And it's really been a pleasure having you here.
Same here. Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.